My fiancé proposed on stage in front of 200 people, cameras flashing, champagne popping, all while plotting to steal my company. I smiled, said yes, and texted my best friend, "Showtime soon." You never think betrayal will come from the person who kisses you goodnight. It was a Tuesday, late afternoon. Most people had already left for the day, but I was still at the office, elbow-deep in cables behind one of our older server units. We'd had this annoying overheating issue for weeks, and I didn't trust anyone else to deal with it properly. That's just how I am. If I built it, I fix it. My name's Nova Sinclair. I'm 32 years old, living in Austin, Texas, and I run a startup called PulseNest. We do real-time AI-driven logistics optimization, boring to most people, but it's my baby. I'd been working like a dog these past few months getting everything ready for our Series A round, and I thought, at least, I had one person who really had my back. That was until I heard Lane's voice. I froze where I was, crouched behind the rack. The office lights were low, and with the hum of the server fans, they didn't notice me. I peeked around the corner. It was Lane, my fiancé, and Geraldine, his so-called mentor. She'd been in the VC world for decades, supposedly a tough but fair type. I never liked how she looked at me like I was an overenthusiastic kid with a lemonade stand. Lane was chuckling. She has no idea. As soon as that funding hits, I'm in. Full visibility, full access. I'll make sure the board sees what a visionary she is once the contracts are signed. My stomach dropped. Geraldine snorted. Good. You just keep playing the golden boy. Once you're in deep enough, it's a quick pivot to push her out. I've already drafted a few policy revisions to start undermining her authority. Lane laughed, actually laughed, and said, "She's so idealistic, it's almost cute. This is business." I couldn't move. My knees were burning from the cold tile, but I didn't make a sound. I reached into my hoodie pocket and hit record on my phone. Lane's voice, the man I planned to marry, was clear as day. Once the funding closes, she's out. Simple as that. That's when something in me snapped. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to storm out. I just sat there and listened. And recorded everything. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my phone clenched in my hand like a weapon. I must have replayed that recording 20 times. Lane's voice, cool and smug. Geraldine's laugh, sharp like a knife. Every word sliced deeper than the last. By morning, I knew I needed help. I called Cameron around 8. "You free to meet?" I asked. He didn't ask questions. Just said, "Yeah." "Usual spot in 30? We met at this tiny coffee shop near Zilker Park, the kind of place with mismatched mugs and lumpy couches. He was already at a back table when I walked in, lawyer casual in jeans and a button-up, hair still damp from a morning run. Cameron's been my best friend since we were 12, he knew something was wrong before I even opened my mouth. I slid into the seat across from him and handed him my phone. "Play it," I said. He listened, his face unreadable. When it ended, he set the phone down gently and looked up at me. "Jesus. I know. You sure you want to play it like this? I mean, you could confront him right now." I shook my head. "And what? Let him know I'm onto him? He'll just get sneakier." Cameron nodded slowly. "Okay. Then we do it smart. We play along, let them think they're winning, and we build a case." That's when everything shifted. I wasn't heartbroken anymore, I was focused. That same afternoon, I installed spyware on our shared home laptop and synced every device Lane had access to through our cloud. We'd always shared passwords, he thought it was about trust. I guess he wasn't wrong. Just not the kind of trust he assumed. By the end of the week, I had everything backing up to a secure folder Cameron helped me encrypt. Client files, financial spreadsheets, team communications, I copied it all. I also started quietly auditing our internal permissions. Lane had more access than he should have. I began fixing that. At home, I smiled like everything was fine. We cooked dinner together. Watched our dumb murder mystery shows. Lane even talked about honeymoon destinations. "The Maldives, maybe," he said one night, pouring me a glass of wine. I smiled back. "That sounds perfect." And in my head, I whispered, "Keep talking, asshole. I'm building your coffin with every word." The hardest part wasn't pretending to love him. It was pretending I didn't already know. Over the next 2 weeks, I became someone else. Polite. Playful. Devoted. I kissed him good morning, laughed at his dumb memes, nodded through his late-night rants about vision scaling. But behind that smile, I was building a case. Every day before work, I checked the spyware dashboard Cameron set up for me. And every day, Lane gave me something new. The first real hit came on a Tuesday. I opened one of the synced email threads and saw a subject line that stopped me cold: Lead Diversion Plan, Phase 2. It was an email from Lane to Geraldine, forwarded from his personal account. Attached were spreadsheets with client contact info. My clients. Clients I had personally pitched and signed. In the body of the email, Lane wrote, "I've looped in a few warm leads from Nova's CRM. We'll redirect after her demo calls and follow up through Catalyst instead. They'll assume it's still through her company for now." Catalyst. That was the dummy company Lane registered last year, just in case we wanted a backup brand. At the time, I thought it was smart. Now, I knew it was betrayal dressed as strategy. That night, I confronted the wine bottle instead of him. I sat on the kitchen floor while he showered, laptop on my knees, hands shaking with rage. "He's selling my work behind my back," I texted Cameron. 5 minutes later, Cameron replied, "Let him keep going. Get it all." So I did. By Friday, I'd uncovered 3 separate client redirection funnels, all leading to Catalyst. The paperwork showed Lane promising early investors equity in my company. One message from Geraldine made me want to scream. "Once you're in charge, clean house." She's too emotionally tied to the product. That kind of founder always cracks. Cracks? I wasn't cracking. I was watching. Recording. Filing every email, voice memo, and draft. The final straw came a week later. I found a shared Google Doc titled Draft, Board Minutes. The date was 2 weeks in the future. It outlined a board discussion in which Lane raised concerns about my increasing volatility and poor leadership judgment, citing imaginary performance issues and a burnout risk. I stared at the screen, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. He wasn't just planning to take my company. He was laying the groundwork to make it look like I handed it to him. Later that night, Lane crawled into bed beside me and kissed my shoulder. "You're quiet," he whispered. "Just tired," I murmured. And I was. Tired of pretending. Tired of lying to a man who was plotting my destruction while holding me at night. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I backed up the forged board document, labeled it clearly, and slid it into the binder I was keeping at Cameron's office. Let them think I was naive. Let them think I'd go down easy. I was just getting started. Lane proposed in front of 200 people under a chandelier the size of my ego when I first started Pulse Nest. It was the annual ATX Tech Gala, black tie, overpriced drinks, and more VCs in one room than in all of LinkedIn. I should have known something was up when Lane insisted I wear the red dress he liked, the one that made me feel like a politician's wife. "I want tonight to be special," he said with that smile. That goddamn rehearsed smile. The moment came right after the awards were handed out. I just stepped down from the stage, still clutching the plaque for Top Founder Under 35. I barely had time to exhale before Lane stepped up, microphone in hand. He gave some speech about destiny and love and building a life together. Then he dropped to one knee. The crowd gasped. Cameras flashed. Somewhere, someone popped champagne. I didn't move. For a full second, I stood there, locked in place like a glitching NPC. My stomach flipped. My mouth went dry. Then I forced a smile and nodded. "Yes," I said. The crowd erupted. Lane stood and kissed me, holding my hand up like we'd won something. And for them, maybe we had. 2 ambitious founders, engaged on stage. It was the kind of power couple optics VCs ate up. I looked out into the crowd and spotted Geraldine smirking over a flute of champagne. She raised her glass to me like it was already over. Like I'd already lost. I slipped my phone out of my clutch and under the table texted Cameron one word. "Showtime soon." Lane leaned in close, still smiling for the cameras. "This is just the beginning, babe. Our empire." I smiled back. "I know. But inside? I wanted to burn it all down, carefully, legally, and with receipts." A week after the gala, I finally found the smoking gun. I was alone in Lane's home office, technically our office, but I'd stopped thinking of it that way. He'd left his laptop open, careless now that he thought I was completely back under his thumb. His email was still logged in. I didn't even need the spyware this time. At first, it was the usual garbage. Investor chatter, Geraldine's smug one-liners, some forwarded news clippings about our engagement. Then I noticed a folder labeled Consulting Transfers. Buried inside was a spreadsheet, coded names, wire transfers, offshore accounts. Shell companies. I zoomed in on one column labeled Geraldine Holdings, disbursed. Line after line of payments, all routed through dummy accounts. I clicked on the last one. The note read, Nova Client Acquisition, Pre-Acquisition Reward. Reward. They were paying people, potential clients, former contacts, to sabotage me from the inside. And worse, they were offering pre-promised shares in Pulse Nest if Lane took over. They weren't just stealing my company. They were weaponizing it. I sat there for a long time just staring at the screen. Then I copied everything to the binder. The emails. The spreadsheets. Screenshots. I even downloaded the video Lane had sent to one investor bragging that the current leadership would be replaced soon. Cameron came by later that night. He took one look at me and said, "You found it." I found everything. We sat on my couch, binder spread open like a war map between us. Cameron's brows furrowed as he traced the paper trail I'd laid out. "This is way bigger than corporate betrayal," he said quietly. "This is securities fraud. Wire fraud. Conspiracy." I nodded. Geraldine's been funneling money to create the illusion of growth. Lane's been misrepresenting my client list to back up false valuations. If this gets out, they're both done, Cameron finished. He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling in someone I trust. Her name's Dana, federal investigator. Startup fraud cases are her specialty." "You trust her?" "With my career," he said. By the end of the night, Dana had the documents. Cameron set up a secure transfer, and within hours, we were looped into a quiet preliminary review. "We'll need to move fast," she said over a scrambled Zoom call. "If this holds up, and I think it will, we'll prep subpoenas and a full-blown investigation." I nodded. My hands were steady now. Cold, but steady. They'd plotted behind closed doors. But I'd turned the lock from the inside. Now I wasn't just taking back my company. I was burning their empire to the ground, and making sure every piece of ash had a name, a date, and a court filing to match. The boardroom was freezing, not from the AC, but from the tension. I sat at the head of the long glass table, a black folder resting calmly in front of me. Lane was seated to my left, wearing that tailored navy suit he always picked for important meetings. He looked smug, polished, rehearsed. Geraldine stood in the corner by the window, arms folded, her mouth already curled into that tight-lipped smirk she wore when she thought she was the smartest person in the room. The rest of the board members shuffled papers, checked watches, murmured about projections and Q2 metrics. No one suspected what was about to happen. Lane cleared his throat. "Before we dive into the agenda, I'd like to introduce a discussion item I believe is long overdue. Here it comes." He smiled at me like we were still engaged. "Nova's done incredible work. No one denies that. But given the company's upcoming growth stage and the demands of long-term scalability, I believe it's time we consider a transitional leadership plan." The room went quiet. "I've drafted a proposal," Lane continued, sliding glossy printouts across the table, suggesting I step in as interim CEO while Nova remains on as founder and strategic advisor. "It's all detailed in the minutes." He gestured to a document that I'd already read days ago, because I'd watched him forge it with my own eyes. Geraldine nodded slightly, the signal she'd probably been giving him for years behind my back. I smiled. "Thank you, Lane," I said, voice calm. "I appreciate your concern. And your creativity." Lane blinked. "Creativity?" I opened the folder in front of me and pulled out a thick stack of papers. "Before we vote, I'd like to present a few materials of my own. For transparency." I passed out copies down the line, each board member flipping through emails, spreadsheets, bank transfer records, forged board minutes with metadata logs, and transcripts of phone calls. Lane's face started to drain. His fingers twitched slightly. Geraldine straightened from the wall. "Is this a joke?" one board member asked. No, I said calmly. It's a timeline of Lane and Geraldine's efforts to undermine this company and execute a hostile takeover, one that includes securities fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy to defraud investors. Every page is backed by documentation. Every allegation is supported by evidence. I reached for the tablet in front of me and tapped the screen. Lane's voice played through the room speakers, clear and sharp. Once the funding closes, she's out. Simple as that. Another voice, Geraldine's. I coached him on how to legally squeeze her out. Founders like her? They break easy. The room fell dead silent. Lane stood abruptly. This is slander. No, a new voice cut in from the doorway. A woman stepped in, flanked by 2 agents. Dana. She held up a folder. Lane Breyer? Geraldine Shore? You've been served. We're initiating a federal investigation effective immediately. Lane actually laughed, a short, broken sound. You're seriously doing this? I stood. Looked him dead in the eye. No, Lane. I already did. They walked Lane out in handcuffs. He didn't say a word, just kept his head down, that cocky smirk finally wiped clean off his face. Geraldine wasn't far behind, arms crossed, eyes blazing with quiet rage. She shouted something about misunderstood intentions and fabricated evidence as she was escorted out, but no one even looked up. The boardroom emptied slowly after that. Some of them avoided my eyes. A few gave me quiet nods. One older investor, a guy who once told me I was too emotional to scale, actually stopped and said, "Hell of a play, Nova." I just nodded and gathered my folder. The next morning, the board reconvened. No Geraldine. No Lane. Just me, Cameron, and a few stunned executives who were still recovering from the whiplash. We reviewed the evidence one more time. Confirmed the fallout, Geraldine was already facing charges for funneling funds through offshore accounts. Lane had been caught offering fake equity to investors and lying about our client pipeline. After a short deliberation, the board voted unanimously. I stayed on as CEO. But not just that, they offered me a higher equity stake, a direct seat on the investor advisory committee, and full control over restructuring. A peace offering, maybe. Or an apology in corporate form. I gave a short speech before we adjourned. Nothing grand. Just the truth. I built this company from scratch, and I almost lost it to someone who knew how to smile and lie at the same time. What I've learned. You don't protect your vision with hope. You protect it with proof. And with people who don't just cheer when things go right, but stand with you when they don't. They clapped. Not the polite kind. The real kind. Afterward, I walked out into the hallway. My phone buzzed, an unknown number. Lane. From jail. I stared at the screen for a long second, then pressed block without answering. No hesitation. I didn't need to hear his voice ever again. He'd already said enough. And I had nothing left to give him. Not even closure. The first thing I did after the dust settled was sign the paperwork to dissolve all shared assets. Lane's name came off everything, the apartment, the accounts, the vehicle registration. I even had our Spotify premium family plan shut down. It was petty, sure. But it felt good. PulseNest wasn't just surviving. It was evolving. I called an all-hands meeting the following week. Everyone had heard pieces of what happened, rumors, headlines, Slack messages that somehow weren't as private as people thought. But I didn't flinch. I stood in front of the team and told them the truth. No matter what version of this story you've heard, here's the one that matters: we're still here. We're still building. And we're not going anywhere. They clapped. Some stood. One in turn cried. I'd never felt more like a leader, not because I was perfect, but because I'd walked through hell and come out clean on the other side. A few days later, I signed a lease on a new office space downtown, big windows, exposed brick, fully mine. I paid the deposit in full, in my name only. It wasn't just real estate. It was a statement. Cameron came by to help christen the place. He brought a 6-pack and a potted cactus he named Proof. For the record, he said, cracking open a beer, I want at least a finder's fee for all the drama. I laughed, for real, this time. Not the polite kind I'd mastered with Lane. The kind that came from somewhere deep, the part of me that still believed in starting over. You can have the corner chair, I said. But no equity. We toasted on the floor of my empty office, no furniture, no decorations, just wide open space and quiet. For the first time in months, I wasn't acting strong. I was strong. I wasn't pretending to be in control. I was in control. And it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about building something no one could take from me ever again. It started as a headline. Noted startup consultant under SEC investigation for fraud. Geraldine's face, tight and defiant in a grainy courthouse photo, splashed across every tech blog and investor forum. One by one, her other ventures unraveled, startups she'd advised, funds she'd co-managed, people she'd groomed. All of them collapsed like cheap scaffolding. Turns out, when you build your empire on stolen equity and rigged valuations, the fall is fast. Brutal, too. She was hit with fines in the millions. Disbarred from consulting. Tech circles stopped whispering her name. They erased her. As for Lane? His sentencing was streamed on a local channel, one of those midday court proceedings nobody usually watches. Except, of course, everyone watched this one. He wore the same navy suit he'd proposed in. It didn't fit quite right anymore. A little looser in the shoulders. Or maybe that was just the weight of consequences. When the judge listed the charges, wire fraud, corporate espionage, attempted securities manipulation, Lane kept glancing at the cameras. I guess he thought if he looked sad enough, regretful enough, someone out there would believe he was the real victim. And just when I thought he'd finally shut up, he looked straight into the court and said my name. None of this would have happened if Nova had just let me help. She pushed me out. She wasn't stable after the funding came in. I didn't watch live. Cameron did. He sent me a screenshot later, Lane mid-sentence, mouth open, eyes wild. Below it, Cameron had typed. You broke him. With paperwork. I didn't reply. Didn't need to. I was sitting on the rooftop of my new office, legs curled under me, a cup of tea in hand. The sun was setting over Austin, warm, clean, orange. There were interview requests, of course. Podcasts. Panels. Book deals. Everyone wanted the founder who'd outsmarted her fiancé and took her company back in style. I said no to all of them. My revenge didn't need a spotlight. It had already worked. I celebrated quietly that night. Just me, Cameron, and a few close friends, the real ones. We raised our glasses and laughed, but it wasn't the champagne that made me feel light. It was peace. No more pretending. No more calculating. Just me. And the empire I built, still standing, stronger than ever, with my name on the door and my past behind me.